Hey there, retail tech enthusiasts. Welcome to the Rising Stars podcast, your go-to source for all things retail technology and the ever-evolving world of point of sale. I'm your host, Kate Orara, Partner Development Manager at Star Micronics, and I am thrilled to be your guide on this exciting journey. Here at Rising Stars, we're not just keeping up with the trends, we're setting them. We dive deep into the tech landscape with global industry leaders, unpacking strategies and discussing the latest innovations that shape the future of retail IT. Whether you're a tech aficionado, a business owner, or just curious about the dynamic world of retail, this podcast is your backstage pass to insider knowledge. And hey, it's not just about the tech, it's about the community. Join me and the Star Micronics team as we lead and innovate, shaping a brighter future for the retail, hospitality, and cannabis industries, as well as beyond. Together, we rise. So hit that subscribe button, stay in the loop, and let's make waves in the retail tech space. This is the Rising Stars podcast, where innovation meets inspiration. Let's rise together. All right, well, here we go. So welcome back to another episode of the Rising Stars podcast. Y'all know me, I'm Kate Orara, and today I'm really excited about this episode. I have the pleasure of being joined with Frank Olea with Olea Kiosks. How are you today?
Doing good, doing good.
Awesome. Well, I would love for you to go ahead and tell everybody on our listeners to go ahead and tell a little bit about yourself and what Olea Kiosks is. I'm sure they probably have an idea of what you guys do with the title
It's
name
based
of
on
the
the name,
company, but just in case, let's just
just
go
a
ahead
little
and tell
bit,
them
a
anyway.
little bit. All right. So, yeah, CEO of Olea Kiosks, and as the name implies, we manufacture kiosks. Been around. Next year is our 50th year in business. Not founded by me, founded by my grandfather and father and uncle back in the mid 70s. But we design and manufacture kiosks, and we work in a lot of different industries: QSR, theme parks, healthcare, travel and hospitality. We do a lot of different kiosks for a lot of different applications.
So, and I know we're trying to make sure that I'm going off on a tangent already, so I apologize about this, but it's
Um,
really interesting that you said that it's a family business. You've been in business for 50 years. I
yeah,
will say I probably haven't seen kiosks really fly off the shelves until probably this last decade.
yeah.
I mean, especially during the COVID times, I bet business was really good for y'all.
But
But
and
y'all
to be fair,
keeping
we were in a different industry. So
okay.
for 30 years, it was a trade show exhibit company. So we built trade show exhibits, and we worked with a lot of electronics companies, car stereo, home stereo. So we were always designing product and always integrating things into the displays and stuff that we made. And so the transition into kiosks was in the mid 90s that we got into that. And so, yeah, like you said, kiosks weren't flying off the shelves in the mid 90s. They were just getting started. But oddly enough, my family, they built the first kiosk that the company did in 1983. So I was myself only 8 years old when they built the first kiosk. There's obviously many years in between that and the mid 90s when we started really doing it. But yeah, there was some experience there, even in the early 80s.
That's just crazy because I mean, like I said, you see nowadays self-service is a you must have it versus a
Right.
well, I'd like to have it. I mean, sometimes the really small mom and pop businesses don't really. I mean, which that
Yeah.
makes sense, but
Yeah,
I
we spent a
mean,
lot of years with, the early adopters, right? The cutting edge companies that really wanted to do something different and unique. And you're definitely in a different phase of the product at this point.
well, that's really cool. No, I did not know that, so I'm always learning something new, and I just learned that today. So thank you for allowing me the moment to take that tangent. So first kind of area that I want to touch on to educate our listeners and our viewers because we are also on YouTube. Hi, y'all. Could you share, let's do some best practices of what you kind of found in your experience. So maybe could you share some examples of some successful kiosk implementations that have really significantly improved customer engagement?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, two things that happened this week actually come to mind. So It's a great question for us. One of them is a customer of ours, ThedaCare. They're a healthcare company based here in the U.S. and they implemented with us a self check-in program where patients, I should say, can come in and check in for their appointment, make their co-pays, set up next appointments and all that on the machine. They just reported that they have 83% of the patients checking in on the kiosk, which we're really happy with. That's a very high number. You know, you talk about early adopters and all that. When we first got into check-in kiosks for healthcare back in like 2007, we were lucky to get like 13% usage. So it's really becoming kind of a mainstay where people understand that, you know, they're self-service and you go and you use it. Another example recently, California Fish Grill, it's a QSR fast casual that we work with, just announced that they're getting 68% of their total in-store sales via kiosk. They even figured out that adding a second kiosk actually boosted the number they previously had by 13%. So they're seeing great success with it.
That's awesome. And so, I mean, is there something about the kiosk design itself that is I mean,
I wish that were the case, that you know, we make the box pretty and people just like have to use it.
Sure.
Uh, it's a lot of factors, honestly. Placement of the kiosk, where you put it. You know, I did a post on LinkedIn just probably 2 weeks ago talking about a restaurant that I went to. There was two kiosks, but they were off to the side, and you're looking at the counter, and there was a line of people when I went in, not using the kiosk, standing in line, waiting to talk to the cashier. And so I walked over and casually, you know, used the kiosk, placed my order, and people saw that happening and they turned and started jumping in line behind me at the kiosk, realizing, I don't know, maybe that they worked, like maybe they were thinking
Well,
they didn't.
someone jumps off the bridge, everybody else is going to jump off the bridge, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. So placement, employee training, you know, that the person at the cashier could have recognized that, hey, there's a line of people here. They could easily point out that there's a kiosk available. But the fact that you would have to point it out, I think, hurts because it really does need to be in line of sight, you know. So there's a whole kind of promotion and process around that you do need to do to be proactive to get people to use it. California Fish Grill, I know, is doing things where they've redeployed the people that would work at the counter out and they're walking around and they actually help people with the kiosk. If they're having some trouble, they help, they educate them. Next time they come in, they're a pro.
Yep. Yeah, use it once. I mean, I remember the first time I went to, you know, the big golden arches. When they started using that,
Right.
at first I was like, oh, I hate this. And now I'm like, dude, this is super easy. And I'll tell you, and I think a donut place, a large donut chain also does this, like Dunkin', I think has a kiosk, or some of them, the locations have a kiosk as well. And they get you, because I'll tell you, I bet you not only what you're saying, the California Fish Grill, like, do they get all those sales, but there's probably all those add-ons.
Oh, yes.
There's the additional add-ons so that the end user is getting more overall sales
Yes.
from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then, you know, I think taking user feedback is important. How is the flow of the software? How is the experience? You know, I mean, you can make changes. That's the nice thing about software. And, you know, there could be glitches in it or things that aren't as intuitive as you felt they were in a laboratory that maybe you need to make some adjustments.
Sure. So how does Olea Kiosks balance the need for advanced features with the simplicity required for user-friendly interfaces? Like, what do you guys do to make those designs?
It can be challenging, for sure. You know, some of the kiosks that we make have a lot of components in them. So it's not just, you know, like what you would see at McDonald's with a touchscreen and a payment device, for example. We're integrating biometrics, fingerprint scanners, passport readers, ID scanners, things like that into the kiosks. And so it can be a challenge where, you know, you're creating a box. The box can't be giant, and you need to put all of this stuff in there, but you need to put it in a way that tells a story, right? When you walk up to the kiosk, it needs to be kind of obvious. what that machine does, what you're going to accomplish there. And then as you work through the process, how ergonomic is it and how laid out can you get the components to flow with the process, uh, and simplify it? I'm a huge fan of simple design, not overdoing things, not putting things on kiosks for the sake of just having something there because it looks neat. So really stripping that back, looking at the product and figuring out ergonomically how you can make all that work. That's probably the funnest thing that I do, honestly.
You have
That's
someone that
the
comes to you
job I
and
enjoy
says,
most.
you have someone that comes to you and says, I want all these bells and whistles, and then you look at it like, oh, but what are you accomplishing? You're actually telling them maybe to pull back a little bit and say,
Yeah,
maybe don't think you need to do all of these. You're almost consulting with them ahead of time before the design
yeah,
happens.
yeah. I mean, realistically, the more hardware that's in the kiosk, the more revenue that my company makes. But I mean, is that really the right thing? And so, yeah, sometimes we're talking customers out of components and looking at other ways to make the kiosk function without having so many pieces.
And is this something that you guys work in conjunction with maybe the software that is selected by the end user?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. A lot of our customers tend to be software companies, so we get to
Okay.
spend time with them. But even then, when we're paired with a software provider, there is a lot of conversation to be had to make sure that, we're just at least, at the very least, aware of how the process is flowing, because maybe we can do things that make that worse, right? And we certainly don't want to do that.
Right. Absolutely. So this is we sometimes the end user might there are certain platforms where it's a self-service kiosk is maybe not the best option, but for many end users it's a really good option. Even some of the medium chains, restaurants
Oh, yeah.
and stores. So but the thing is whenever they see the price point or the cost, like, okay, that's it's going to cost me that much, I can't afford it. What are some strategies that resellers can use to effectively communicate the benefits of a self-service kiosk to potential customers and end users?
Well, I think statistics are the biggest thing. That was something that 10, 20 years ago we didn't have. We knew it worked, but it was kind of anecdotal advice.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of information available now online, talking about like upselling. If QSR puts it in, you can expect like a 13% upsell in your tickets. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
those kinds of numbers are huge, right? I mean, like if I owned a restaurant, I'd probably shut down and just have the kiosks out there, right? Trying to get that
Yeah.
extra 13% bump. But um, I think it really, nowadays is more available where you can talk to a lot of the software providers and they are pulling the statistics on usage rates and adoption and how much time people are spending on the kiosk. And, are you using it to do a line busting scenario and try to cut down time for people in the facility, or is it doing a service that you just don't have a person available for now? So going back and looking at um, what the potential ROI is huge on that. So it takes a little bit of research and having some conversations with some good vendors, but definitely worthwhile. I mean, it's not a if you build it they will come scenario, or you're just gonna instantly make all this extra money because you put a kiosk in. That's just not the case.
So another thing, you talked about the ROI, which was, I'm glad that you touched on that. And this is kind of another question that's kind of come up in my head. Labor. I know that the labor, like there's still kind of a labor shortage. It's still not like there's still not a lot of people that want to work these jobs. So is it
Right.
something that gets thrown in there as well? I mean, kiosks, they don't get sick. They don't, well, they shouldn't get sick at least. They don't get sick. They don't just not show up to work. I mean, they're there.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, labor shortage definitely was a huge thing coming out of the pandemic, right? I mean, like it was so bad, let alone putting kiosks in. You couldn't get people to deploy or buy kiosks or whatever because companies were just so, short staffed on everything.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, I think it has to be looked at as what's the real goal with the kiosk? Like really being honest with yourself on why are we putting it? I mean, are we putting it in because the guy next door has kiosks and we think we need to do that? Are we doing it again because of speed? Are we line busting? Are we trying to make more revenue? Are we filling a gap in our labor staff that we don't have at the moment? And going into it, knowing why you're doing it, I think then you could start measuring the results of what the kiosk is actually doing for you. And sometimes you'd be surprised, in healthcare. We had a real big surprise where they're doing check-in and they thought it was more of a, we don't have the labor to be there at the desk. And so we'd like people to come and check in at the kiosk and make their copay. But it turned out they were collecting like 8% more of their collections off of the kiosk than they were at the desk. So the deal is, you come up, I check in, I swipe my card, and it says, okay, your visit today, your copay is $20. But it can also pop up and say, oh, and by the way, from your last visit, you had a $10 copay that wasn't made. Would you like to do that now? Sure, right? And so I take care of that now. So the kiosks suddenly were collecting revenue that was floating out there that wasn't being collected otherwise. And so the customer realized that it was an added benefit that they hadn't anticipated.
Wow. No, it's interesting that you get more revenue, or you can collect more revenue and just again give the convenience to customers from that
Right.
standpoint.
They might not know, I mean, it's happened to me where I've gone in and made my copay, but then I went to do an X-ray and didn't realize there was another copay due. And so you get uh, contacted, later that you've got this past due bill or whatever with your insurance carrier. So
Hate that. I hate that we get them. You're like, you're naughty. You didn't get your, and I'm like, dude, I didn't even know. I would have paid this right then and
right,
there.
right, yeah, nobody told me. So the kiosk can help with some of that stuff. So it was a pleasant benefit that the customer didn't even expect.
Yeah. Nobody likes collections or the word collections. Like this just,
Right. Yeah.
it's like a
Yeah.
baseball card
Gets
collection or
gets the
something
heart
like
rate going.
that. So are there some emerging trends that maybe you've noticed in self-service technology that resellers of the channel should highlight when promoting to end users?
Um, I don't know if there's like specific trends that new processes and things that are happening, or new kiosk applications per se, but it's just the fact, like you said at the beginning, that they're really everywhere, that kiosks are taking off. And so it used to be that I could probably count on it that every other week I would have somebody contact us about a kiosk application that I'd never heard of. That wow, that's a new use case for kiosk technology that I hadn't thought of in the past. That's slowing down a little bit. I mean, I am seeing them in more unique applications. We just created a new product specifically for truck driver check-in. So, you think about these big warehouses and you've got all these trucks showing up all day long, and you got your traditional, the little guard shack, and the guy comes out and wants you to sign a clipboard. But you could do all that now from the truck. You can reach out and touch the screen, and we can do more. We can collect biometrics. We can do facial recognition to compare to the driver's license and know that that truly is the right driver in the right truck picking up the right product. So I think you're seeing things like biometrics again, facial recognition, fingerprint, iris. We're working with palm vein scanning right now, where different facilities want to know who's there, who's showing up. Is it really the right person? Stadiums are doing things with facial recognition now, so you can, register your tickets with your face and walk straight through to go into the game. So it really is about, I guess, taking some of the functions used in other locations like airport and all that, and then applying it to retail or sports or theme parks or whatever.
Actually, the facial recognition I took my son to see the Man City play in Chapel Hill last month,
Okay.
and we got kicked out of the stadium because there was lightning, and then we had to come back in, and it took forever because they had to scan everybody
Oh,
And it was hot and muggy, and we were all like next to each other. It was disgusting.
just rain.
Like
Oh, that's the
I,
worst.
I hate people. My son was like right up on me, and sweaty teenagers are just not cool. Like it's just not. So you say that, I'm like, oh my God, that would have been so awesome. I could just literally, they could just let me. I'm like, yep, we biometrically recognize your face and
Right.
your face, and then we'd have to be huddled in there like, oh, it was horrible. Anyway,
Exactly. Going back, finding the ticket on your phone or whatever. Yeah, all that stuff.
yep. Then it times out, and that's the whole thing.
I'm with.
So, what are some? Let's go into because one of the things that does happen after time, obviously, technology is always evolving. It's evolving quickly. It's probably evolving more rapidly now, year over year versus 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So,
Right.
what are some best practices for transitioning existing self-service applications to new hardware or software platforms?
Um, as we work with customers that come back to us, we'll have it's not uncommon to have kiosks 5, 7 years out in the field. And so um really the big thing for us is if it's a hardware change that's happening, like it's very common for EMV, credit card payment devices
Mhm.
to have to be changed over time because there's new security features and things. Um, Bench kits, testing these things, I think is really, really important. Knowing exactly that how you're going to update software or whatever is going to happen there, that's been tested. Don't just go out and install things and expect it to work right away.
Mhm.
Uh, the other thing we do is sometimes we have to test that stuff. Send out a new bracket, make sure that it bolts to the kiosk correctly, and you're not out there with drills drilling holes in a kiosk inside of a restaurant or something. So really, the best advice is test, test, test before you do anything out in the field. That's
Yeah.
the most important thing.
Absolutely. I mean, that's whether you're doing a new system or updating a current system is testing away and
We see it all the time, right? Right. Companies right now in the news that are like pushing updates to software and we're crippling entire parts of the country with, blue screen of death. Like you got to test this
talk
stuff.
about the airlines. I mean, there's a lot of issues going on with that
Maybe,
right
you gotta test things. I mean, people like to get really comfortable with stuff and think that it's easy and ready to go, but it
now.
it you just the real world will always tell you something that your lab or whatever didn't.
I always say it's someone will ask me like, can you check this out and see what you think of the system or whatever. I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll go in and see how I can break it. I mean, that's really what you want is you want them to break it. And actually, another little side note, like my brother-in-law works for a gaming company and he had a gaming deck,
Okay.
portable deck, and it was a prototype. And so he gave it to his nephew, my son, for Christmas one year. My son kept breaking it. But the thing is, he was feeding all the best information back to this gaming company and they were able to perfect it.
Yeah.
So it was the best thing they could have. They gave this to a 13-year-old teen, boy. And
Right.
he just broke the crap out of it. And now
Yeah.
it's a well-working system.
Yeah. Yeah. No, fail fast, try to break it. I mean, that's
Mhm.
that's like our whole mantra in our prototype department is you can sit there at the CAD station and look at that kiosk 10 ways till Sunday, but until you actually build it, you're not going to learn anything, right? And then once you've built it, you're going to learn a lot. And then even then, we put pilots out in the field and
Yeah.
there's, a small quantity of them and you're just trying to abuse that machine and figure out where is it going to break, right? Nothing's completely impenetrable. So you need to try to find those before you go on a large rollout.
So how can companies minimize the downtime and disruption when they're doing this upgrade or changing the kiosk hardware? And what are some challenges that they should anticipate?
Again, back to the testing and the bench kit. We just did earlier in the year Empire State Building. We built several years ago like 35 full custom kiosks, really insane stainless steel Art Deco machines that we built for them, and they needed to go back and upgrade their payment device. And that required us to physically remake a portion of the kiosk. And so in order to get all that right and do it without downtime, they wanted to switch everything at night while they were shut down. And so we were given a really small window of time that you would show up in the evening and have to swap out these panels and the device and load the software and do all the testing to open up in the morning. You couldn't have partial because it was a new payment device. And so there was a unit in their lab that we built prototype parts, flew out there, installed them, tested that, took the notes, brought that back, re-engineered the part, tested it again, and then worked out a plan of, okay, two technicians, how long is it going to take? How are they going to get this done? They were completely prepared. I mean, it was like going into battle, what you would expect SEAL Team 6 to do before they go in somewhere, right? You're training and training, and you've got all this visuals. And
I
so we
have
did
this
that.
visual of them going in with like night vision goggles just to install.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They rappel down from the ceiling, but
Yeah. That'd be cool. That'd be really cool.
they got it done, and they were done in plenty of time before opening the next morning. But it was a challenge, and I told the team going into it, I said, we're going to prepare so much on this that when we get it done, we're going to think we over prepared, right? Because there was no glitches and no hiccups. But I really believe that it went that smoothly because we over prepared.
Yeah, I bet you were still sweating a little bit when it did launch that next morning. Like, please don't die, please don't fail, please work, please work, please work.
There's always that fear, right? When you hit the power switch, what's going to happen?
Holding the breath. Yeah,
Yeah.
please
Did
work.
we get that right?
So there are some businesses that will do everything they can to not have to upgrade. Like they're like, oh, I'm going to do the investment and never have to upgrade. I
Somebody's
think
running Windows 95 out there somewhere,
I
right?
mean, it probably is. Still trying to load, still using dial-up. And I mean, as much as I understand that investment, they're doing everything they can to future-proof their current kiosk solution against those inevitable changes and upgrades. So what advice would you have to them? Like, what do you give them kind of a timeline? Like, this should last you at least this long, but do you what
We
are the
go,
advice you
well,
give?
yeah. I mean, we push for like 5 to 7 years, but I've seen some of our customers. We were at Pala Casino down here in San Diego when my son got married, and I couldn't believe like the machines we made for them 12 years prior were still running. Now, it did not have the same monitor in it. I got a hold of people and asked, and things were changed, but the kiosk was modular enough that they were able to go in and change LCDs and change out PCs and all that. And they took really good care of the enclosure. They were always cleaning
Mhm.
them and all that. So from the outside, they looked brand new. I mean, they really did a great job. And every once in a while, we'll get a phone call here and they'll give us the serial number, when you need service on the kiosk. And the serial number immediately tells us the year that it was built. And so the team will run around like, oh my God, we got somebody on the phone that's got a 10-year-old kiosk. And so we're always like, send pictures, we want to see what it looks like after 10 years. And it's usually, the backlight and the LCD is burned out. It's a light, right? They don't last forever.
Sure.
And so the question is, what monitor can I put in this kiosk? How can I do it? And so because we're the manufacturer, right? We designed it, we manufactured it, we have all the CAD files, we can look everything up. We can contrast and compare, new monitors and all that, and what should fit in the kiosk. And depending on the client, sometimes we'll make new parts for them or whatever to keep the unit up and running. So um, I would say, if you really want longevity out of the machine, working with a company like us, and there's others, right? We're not the only one that really is in control of the design and manufacturing, that has all of that expertise in house, and it's not a product, an off the shelf thing bought through distribution. Good luck getting a hold of somebody that knows anything about that 6 years down the road, or made overseas. I mean, there's some good products that are made overseas, but 6 years from now, who do you contact and how are you going to make a change? So I think that's really important, is who's the company you partnered with and how modular is that product?
Yeah, so that's what I'm hearing you say is probably the most key thing to keep longevity of your solution is the modular capability.
Yeah.
Um, you
I
know,
mean, think about your company, Star, right? At some point, we deploy a kiosk with one of your printers in it.
hmm
some point down the road that printer, a new model is going to come out.
Yep.
The old one's not available, and a customer is going to say, well, we love the kiosk. We want to keep it running, and Star came out with a new model.
Yep.
Is it too big? Is it too little? Is the printer slot exactly in the same spot? Do we need to put a riser in there to get the paper to come out? And so that's what the engineering team here is doing, right? Is how do we keep this customer up and running with this new product?
Yeah. So it's almost like if they do go with someone of an overseas company that, yeah, it might be cheaper, but do you have that modular capability? Because if they can call you or contact you and say, I need a new bracket for my new Star TSP 143 version 4 printer versus
Right.
the old TSP 143 version 3. So you could actually work with them, and all I have to do is install a bracket versus I'll have to redesign an entire whole new kiosk.
Right. We'll throw it out and start over. We've seen customers do that, and that's painful.
I was gonna say that hurts. That would hurt really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. These are investments. I mean, there is the lower end, I suppose, of the market that the kiosk was $2,500 and you're 5 years down the road, no big deal. But we got customers paying $15,000, $20,000, outdoor kiosks that they're expecting to last for long periods of time. Those are significant investments, especially if they bought, say, a couple $100,000 worth of those kiosks. So the ability to support that and make sure that the customer, not only is achieving ROI, but even going beyond that for a couple years is great. I mean, it's like paying off your car, right? Pay off your car and you want to drive it for an extra 3 years without a payment. They're hoping for the same thing on the kiosk.
Yeah. Well, I think I really appreciate your time, Frank. I think that you've given a whole lot of wonderful nuggets of information to our listeners and our viewers. Is there anything that maybe I did not cover that you would like to touch on?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think we got it all. I think we did too. I think we covered that and then some. So what are some ways that, and we'll put this in our show notes, but any ways that if people want to talk with you, because one of the things too that you talked about that I realize it's about partnerships. So partnering with Olea Kiosk for the kiosk, partnerships with Star for the receipt printing and maybe even the scanner, partnering with a software company. Like there's a lot of partnerships involved. So
yes. If
someone wants to reach out to you, any of our listeners want to reach out to you or maybe start that conversation, how could they get in touch with you? Website, social media, any of that?
Website, obviously, an easy way, but social media, I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if you reach out to me on LinkedIn, I'm constantly posting videos behind the scenes, things that go on here at the factory. That one I think is very intimate. I'm not posting generally about the new kiosk model and that, but really behind the scenes about why we did something a certain way or how we manufacture this part. And customers really like that. They've responded very well. And I'm always surprised when I meet somebody and turns out they've been following me for some long period of time on LinkedIn, just kind of, behind the scenes, watching and seeing what happens and deciding that maybe they like the type of company we seem to be.
Awesome. So we will make sure we include, not only I'll get your social media handles and everything after this, but we'll make sure we include that in the show notes. So if you guys are interested in reaching out to Frank, highly encourage you to find him, Frank Olea, on LinkedIn. Otherwise, thanks so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Share it with other people, like, subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much, Frank. And that's a wrap for this episode of the Rising Stars podcast. A huge thanks to our incredible listeners for tuning in and to our phenomenal guests for sharing their insights. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, leave us a review. Let us know what you want to hear more about. Give us your feedback because it fuels our journey to bring you the best in retail technology. Stay connected with us on social media for updates and behind the scenes content. As we sign off, remember the future of retail technology is in our hands, and together we're shaping it. Keep innovating, keep rising, and until next time, this is Kate Orara signing off. Together, we rise.